share your time with the minister?
Yes, please.
All right, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister. I'm going to get sort of right to the heart of this. In your opening comments, Minister, you made a number of comments that bother me. Okay. And they bother, I think, a lot of people who are employers, entrepreneurs, professional people that employ people. And that is, you know, the idea of everyday working people and creating this divide between employees and employers. I'd like to just say for the record that employers are working people too. We work hard, and having employed people in my business for over 25 years, and I think having treated my employees, I think, very fairly, and you know, I think I resent this overriding attitude from your government that somehow, if you're an employer, you're not an everyday working person. So I just wanted that on the record. I want to move on, because time is limited, to the question of minimum wage. It's certainly one of the pillars of your government's overall economic agenda. On page 108 of your business plan, 1.3 key strategies, fully implement the $15 minimum wage in Alberta. And you mentioned in your opening remarks, Minister, that the $15 minimum wage is one of the things you're very proud of. And one of the comments you made, though, that I have to ask a question about, and that is, we know, you said, I think, and if I'm quoting directly here, we know who they are.
Yes.
Right. Well, it seems, Minister, that your ministers don't know who they are. About 15 hours ago in this room, and during estimates on culture and tourism, and I'm going to quote the Culture and Tourism Minister, the minimum wage will help reduce poverty in many respects as well, because it does have an impact on the majority of the workers that are impacted by minimum wage, being single mothers in the province. Now, Minister, if indeed we know who they are, and I assume all of your colleagues in Executive Council and the Cabinet Ministers know who they are, how can you reconcile that statement with the statistics I have from your own website that indicate only 6.2% of minimum wage earners, or people earning below $15 an hour, are single parents with children? And that's single parent, not reference to gender.
So you are exactly correct that we post on the Alberta Labour website information about who our minimum and low wage earners are. Mm-hmm. Every year we update the low wage earner profile, and from that we know that there's approximately 300,000 Albertans who earn $15 or less. Right. 100,000 of them are parents, but you are correct that not all of those are single parents. We know that over 60% are women. Right. We know that 75% of them are non-students. Actually, and the statistics here are very good, and I actually looked these up last night, and you're right, 292,400 is very close to 300,000. But, you know, again, and then I asked the minister about an hour later about, you know, that statistic he indicated, and the minister said that's one of the stats that I received. Okay. So, Minister, I'm just sort of letting you know that the minimum wage information that's even shared amongst your own government for a pillar policy of your government is one that is not necessarily widely known. But I will tell you that as far as the business people that I talk to, the rapid implementation of a $15 minimum wage at breakneck speed, 47% increase in the minimum wage in the space of less than 4 years, has been the single most damaging piece of policy to the viability of small businesses in the province. And earlier you said that you have the backs of employers as well. Well, I think I have a lot of small business owners that would disagree with you. So my question is, what percentage of, or I guess my first question is it the goal of this government to have fewer workers earning the minimum wage? So when we are looking at our labor market, when we are looking at what is happening with workers in this province, making sure that somebody who is earning a minimum wage is not having to stop at the food bank is one of our I understand that. I understand that. But I guess my question again is it the objective of the government to have a lower percentage of workers earning minimum wage? So through the policy of increasing the minimum wage, we understand that that will increase the percentage of people earning minimum wage. Mm-hmm. It just naturally does that because the group of people earning minimum wage gets larger as the increases go in. Making sure that all Albertans are supported in that if they feel they are underemployed and would like to retrain or further their education, these are important things that our Labour Ministry supports through our training and skills.
No
supports.
disagreement with that. I absolutely agree with upgrading and training to upgrade skills and development, because that, I think that then is one of the pathways to moving beyond minimum wage. I 100% agree with that. But Alberta has historically had the lowest percentage of its workers earning minimum wage. In fact, at one point, not too many years ago, according to Statistics Canada, we were below 1% of our total workforce that earned minimum wage. And as recently as 2009, that number was 1.3%. In 2013, that number was 1.8%. So, Minister, I would actually think, perhaps in contrary to what you've said, I actually think that the goal is to have as low a percentage of Albertans as possible earning the minimum wage. I want to move on to another area, though, Minister, because this also came up in culture and tourism, and that is with regards to the costs and what this has done as far as employment. Now, you mentioned a few minutes ago that employment was actually increasing in the I think you said accommodation and food services sector.
Yes.
And yet the statistics that I have from workers' compensation, and this is a slightly different metric. This is from the hotels and convention centers. WCB Industry Code 87503 indicates that from 2013 to 2018 year to date, the number of workers actually hasn't changed. Well, it's increased by one. It's gone from 29,297 to 29,298. And yet the salaries paid is increased by 12%. And what we are seeing in the hotel and lodging sector is a drop in overall profitability, partly because of increasing costs and partly because of decreasing revenue. So, Minister, I'm just wondering if you mentioned to my colleague, the member for Calgary Southeast, that you're going to be working with the nonprofit sector. Are you also going to be working with the for-profit sector, sectors like the Hotel and Lodging Association, to analyze what the impact of increasing minimum wage has been on the profitability and indeed the viability of that sector?
Thank you for that question. And if I may, I would just like to disagree that low percentage of people earning minimum wage should be a goal that government should look to achieve, because if we set minimum wage at $1, we would get a very low percentage of people earning minimum wage.
Sure.
The work that we do with business and nonprofits as we look to monitor the implementation is really of the increase in minimum wage, as well as all of the other workplace legislation changes, is very important to us. That is done through myself directly meeting with the Hotel and Lodging Associations, with CFIB, with other business groups. That is done through the work of our Parliamentary Secretary for Small Business, who meets regularly with our business stakeholders, and my department will also make themselves available. I would suggest that our current partnership with the Alberta Chambers and the chambers across the province to help deliver more information to business is helping to improve our ties and the communications that we have, and feeding more information back into the ministry. So to answer your question, we work with all sectors and all employers on both minimum wage and workplace legislation.
Okay. Well, I encourage you to continue to do that, because the feedback certainly that I'm receiving from entrepreneurs, from hardworking Albertans, but those that happen to sign the front of the paycheck and not the back of the paycheck, they are telling me that the changes you've implemented, both the minimum wage and employment standard, have caused them a great deal of hardship and have caused them a damage to the viability and indeed the profitability of their businesses. Now, one of the statistics I haven't seen recently, and I'm hoping somebody has this, and that is that, of course, we always look at what the gross minimum wage per hour is and compare it to other provinces. Alberta right now lost its lead position to Ontario because they leapfrogged us on the 1st of January, but we'll gain our lead position back again. They're at $14 an hour as of the 1st of this year.
That's correct.
So, but of course, we'll get back out in front as of October 1st when we go up to $15. What I'd like to know is Alberta has some of the most generous income tax provisions in terms of personal exemptions. And one of the things we always like to compare was for people earning a minimum wage, what was the comparison of take-home pay? How does someone earning the minimum wage in Alberta compare in take-home pay to people earning the minimum wage in other provinces? Now, even though Alberta historically was sort of right in the middle of the pack as as far as minimum wage gross. As far as net, as far as take-home pay, Alberta was always one of the highest. So where do we compare now that the changes have been made to minimum wage?
Okay, and I do have some of those minimum wage comparisons. Is that?
Yeah, that's the first 10 minutes, Dr. Swan. The additional 10 minutes will be for your.